is Purple Trader 3169, and this is Thomas.
Hi.
And this is Will. Isn't that interesting? And today we are talking about deaf culture and cochlear implants.
I'm excited.
As you can tell, he has a little bit of experience with this. He is going to school for.
I'm going to school for audiology, speech language pathology. Haven't really decided which field yet, but I did graduate with a speech language and a hearing science degree. So that's like the baseline degree to going into getting a doctorate of audiology or a master's in speech language pathology, eventually leading into a doctorate in that too. So, yeah.
All right, great.
What are those two fields?
So, he knows a lot about a lot of things that I don't know about. But hopefully I can educate him a little bit tonight. So, what we're talking about is deaf culture. First thing we're going to start off with is, what is culture to begin with? Culture itself, according to the Dictionary of Psychology, it's the distinctive customs, values, beliefs, knowledge, art, and language of a society or community. So, deaf people in general, they claim a culture, and according to the World Federation of the Deaf, it includes beliefs, attitudes, history, norms, values, literary traditions, and art. Okay, so it qualifies, they have their own culture, and that is their own culture. We have to make sure we are defining deaf, because when you say deaf with a capital D, that's different than deaf with a lowercase d. So that's kind of I found difficult to define a little bit, because every place I kind of looked, it was kind of deaf with a, what would you say?
That's how they differentiate between the two. It's Big D being like the cultural side of being deaf. Like, they take pride in being deaf. They don't look at having hearing loss as, having a hearing loss. They look at it as deaf gain, which is,
yes, I saw that deaf gain. That was one of the things I was like, I was looking at, like, so it's opposed to hearing loss, deaf gain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what can you be gaining
from
losing your hearing or not having hearing to begin with? But they gave a lot of examples, like, one of them was like, being able to focus on your work because you're not hearing noises and stuff. But, like, another one was, like, people who are deaf have better peripheral vision.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Which is something that I thought was really, like, strange. Like, you lose a sense, you get heightened senses. Or, like, but other things, too. It's like, your cultural... you get the gain of a community. You get the experiences that somebody else wouldn't get because you can connect with somebody else.
No, very, very true. And sort of there's sort of a caveat to deaf culture too. It's like, they are so, like, within their culture. They want to preserve everything about it. They want to preserve the language, art, and so with that said, they kind of don't really like talking to people who don't speak strictly ASL. So if you sign in English, like essentially English Sign Language is different from American Sign Language
You
in
mean
terms
like
of
from Great Britain?
Well, no.
Or do you mean...
Britain's different as well. They have a different
Well,
sign
you mean
language.
like English, like... What do you mean
Like
by English?
like English as in like English here, like American English. Like
Oh.
the way the grammar's
Oh.
structures
Oh, okay.
set up with between the two. Completely different. We sort of set up ours as subject predicate. Theirs is topic comment, and a lot of confusing factors come into
Right.
play when you translate ASL directly into English, and so they only like talking to people who know strict ASL and who were born deaf. So even if you're like,
That was one of the things I saw on there that was... It's kind of like an end comment every time I see the definition of it, where it's like, it's basically capital D. It's deaf culture, you know, people, and then the end comment is basically you have to be born deaf.
Yeah.
I mean, but that makes sense because you can't really be immersed in
Mhm.
deaf culture, completely immersed in deaf culture, if you weren't born deaf,
Mhm.
because you don't entirely get it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't entirely get it
Mhm.
if you weren't born deaf.
Yeah, at least like, or at least by the time you start learning language, you start.
Yeah, that was one of the things I learned too. Is like prelingual, you know,
Yeah, prelingual.
like before, probably around 2 to 3, before you remember. you know, like before that, if you lost your hearing before that, you know, you wouldn't. I mean, I guess you could be immersed in deaf culture by then, but you know, the other definition, so lowercase d, it's just you can't hear.
Yeah, like like, and that expands to all types of hearing loss
Mm-hmm.
from mild to profound.
Right.
Like yeah. So big, yeah. Little d deaf is like, yeah, I'm deaf. I can't hear things either as well. Like, so people who are hard of hearing, um, they'll either go strictly into deaf culture. They can kind of like sort of quote unquote sneak their way into it.
Right.
But I mean, they still can hear. They still can have somewhat of an ability to communicate with people who are hearing through
Mm-hmm.
what little signal they get, and
They can at least be allies, I guess.
yeah. But
And then there's hard of hearing.
mhm.
That's self-explanatory.
Yep.
One thing I do want to say is there are a lot of terms that have been retired.
Yes. Yes.
Hearing impaired.
Hearing impaired. That's a
Um,
big one. Mhm.
Obviously deaf and mute.
Oh, deaf, mute, and also deaf and dumb.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Those are way politically incorrect. Do not, even in joking, say that.
Yeah, like
Ever.
I mean, it's funny that you say that too, because I remember going to the subtitle sections of the movies that I used to watch with Troy, and it would always say like, for the hearing impaired, and
Yeah, well, it
up
used to
until
be, at least hearing impaired is our generation, like, not now, but when we were kids,
Mhm.
because that was the politically correct term then,
Yeah.
and now but that's the evolution of, that's the evolution of how words evolve. And why am I looking at the chat?
What's up? What's up, man? Master Iron Man.
Iron Man, I wish, is chatting about things.
Nocho bueno.
Speaking of which, Iron Man, can you hear us? I hope. I hope we're not like 20 minutes in or something and they can't
And they
hear
can't
us.
hear us.
I
Like
mean,
that.
that'd be appropriate, but...
Yeah, right.
Good friend OMFG Sevi, and she was nice enough to plop you a follow and is currently lurking your podcast. Shout out.
Good stuff.
Thank you. All right, great.
Oh, that's awesome.
So a little bit about the history of deafness and the deafness. So okay, starting with like in 355 BCE, Iron Man. BCE, there was on one of the last podcasts, we had a conversation about what BCE means. Do you know what that means?
Like before Common Era?
Ah! He knew it!
Yeah.
We couldn't think of it off the top of our heads. He was like, before Christ existed?
Before Christ existed?
God damn it. Bobby.
Damn it, Bobby, that's not what it means. No, yeah, we started using that in history class. I remember that. I was like, oh, I remember BC, before Christ existed.
Oh, look, she gave us a shout out to 42 people. That was cool.
Yay.
Awesome.
That's cool. Oh.
So in 355 before Christ existed. I just want to preface this with deaf people they've had a long history where deafness was believed to be a deficit and not a benefit, not a gain, anything like that. So Aristotle said that those who are born deaf all become senseless and insane, incapable of reason. That's what Aristotle said.
Oh man.
Yeah. And because many people believed hearing was an innate skill, because they believed it was an innate skill, not biological, like a skill.
Yeah.
Not like something not like an organ.
Oh, what?
Yeah, they thought it was something in your
okay.
brain hole, and not. Yeah. So they thought that you're dumb, right?
Oh,
right.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
What?
So, moving on, this is, it took a long time to this progression. In 400 AD, St. Augustine believed that faith comes by hearing. So, if you could, yeah. So, probably, but get this, here's the logic, right? Most people couldn't read back then.
Mm-hmm.
So, how could you get your God if you couldn't hear?
Yeah, that's right. You couldn't hear the sermons, and
right?
Like, imagine being a deaf person back in those days and just like looking at all these mouths move, and you're just.
Yeah, think about that. The common person couldn't read,
mm-hmm.
and the common person wasn't educated at all anyway.
Yeah.
So they couldn't teach people anything. They weren't. The common person was a workhorse, basically. So, a deaf person would be very hard to have, as a child,
mm-hmm.
and figure out, how to teach a deaf child to communicate with you and how to get that child to work. The last episode was my birthday episode. We were talking about the value of a child before the 1850s was economical.
Mm-hmm.
You have a child to put them to work.
Yeah.
And how are you going to put a child to work if you can't communicate? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
that's sad. And half of the
Oh.
kids died anyway. I mean...
Oh, yeah. No.
I mean, he did believe, though, St. Augustine did believe that deaf could learn, which was new. That was new. I mean, it only took 700 years.
It took some...
But...
these people may not be as dumb as we think.
Right. Read my chat. Give her a follow. Also, log in on your phones to be a part of the stream. Okay. So, also, so next, 1,000 years later, in the 1500s, alright, hold on, let me get on my Twitch, my Twitchness. Oh, it says I need an update. Hold on. Okay.
Wait.
That's when education really began with speech versus deafness, okay? So they thought before then that speech was connected to deafness.
Oh, that's great.
So in 1521, Rudolph Agricola, he was a humanist, he advocated for speech, that speech was separate from the ability of thought. So, deaf, in that time, deaf people couldn't speak because they were deaf, but it wasn't it's because they couldn't communicate because they had no ASL, or they didn't have any sign language at that point.
Yeah, they had no language to build.
They had no common language.
Yeah. Oh, that's.
And so, but he was like, "Oh wait, they can, speech is separate from thought. Like your ability to speak is different than your ability to think." What? Mind blown. Yeah.
Wait. Yo.
And then, so this, in Girolamo Cardano, he was 1501 to 1576. He was the first physician to recognize the ability of a deaf person to reason. So a deaf person does have the ability to reason.
And they found this out
in the mid 1500s.
What they do, just
well, you know how they're postulating.
They're are they just looking at them and being move, rock, over, that's.
And then by 1591, there was the first book by, his name was just Alberti. He was a physician, called The Discourse of Deafness and Speechlessness. It showed that the deaf can read lips, understand speech, and read. That was the first book ever written about it. 1591. Yeah.
Whoa.
That's only 400. What is it? That's when Columbus sailed the... No, that was after. That was 100 years after Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Yeah,
1492.
1492. Gee.
No, we did not cover Helen Keller yet.
Yeah. Oh, it's all good.
Helen Keller, not yet. So in 1620, there were two people, Melchor de Yebra and Juan Pablo de Bonet. Something like that. They're in Spain. They were the earliest records of um, of deaf education, like actually educating the deaf.
Oh.
And this is well, isn't that interesting? Okay, they taught them sign language, and you know what the sign language was? It was the hand alphabet that was used by the monks who had vows of silence. Yeah, isn't that cray?
Monks. Monks gave that. That is so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
They inputted a huge like they don't even know they implemented just a huge evolution of an
Isn't that crazy?
expansion of language and whoa, that's awesome.
All right.
That's awesome.
Okay, so and then we're gonna fast forward. There were deaf schools that were in Germany and Spain, and they popped up.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1812, the Braidwood School was the first deaf school in America. Okay, 1817, the American School for the Deaf was established by Mason Cogswell.
Thomas Gallaudet.
Okay, I was like.
Yep.
Lawrence Clerk.
Lawrence Clerk. Yep.
And they created the first American Sign Language,
Mm-hmm.
and it was between it was a combination of French Sign Language and Martha's Vineyard Sign Language.
Yeah.
Like.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's how they came up with American Sign Language. In 1864, President Lincoln signed an act that allowed for the establishment of a school for the deaf. The only world liberal art university for deaf and hard of hearing for students is Gallaudet University.
Mm-hmm.
In the world.
Yep, in the world. That's right.
In the world.
That's right.
And
that's where my brother goes now.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. He goes to Gallaudet University.
Yeah.
So.
History. So here's the question.
Mm-hmm.
How many, I guess you wouldn't know the number, but do a lot of deaf people also go to, other schools?
Mm-hmm.
Is it hard for them to do that? Or can they get signers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can get interpreters for classes. Especially if they go to a hearing school, like if you're part of the deaf culture, you typically want to go to a school where deaf culture is pretty prominent, and those are only found in the two schools that do that are what is it? Gallaudet being one. That's the epicenter of deaf culture, and God, I'm trying to think of it. I think it's RIT. RIT. Yeah, that's what Troy told me. Yeah. The school, the RIT Technical Institute in New York, is also a huge epicenter for deaf culture.
Are there a lot of deaf high schools or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's actually deaf and blind schools all throughout the nation. So here in Colorado we have CSDB, which is the Colorado School for the Deaf and Blind. New Mexico's got one.
But it's not multiple in each state.
Not multiple, no. I mean, I'm not really sure. I'm pretty sure there is.
So you basically would have to move.
But they're few and far between. Yeah, if you're in an area that doesn't have a deaf school, you gotta find an area that does have one,
Right.
because they're few and far between. I think there's like only 2 deaf high schools in Colorado, and that's Colorado Springs. And here we actually have
It's like
in
right
Lakewood.
down the street.
Yeah, it's like right down Kipling is the Rocky Mountain School, Rocky Mountain Deaf School,
Right.
and they don't have blind people going there. It's
Oh.
just deaf.
Right.
Or big D, little D doesn't matter.
Right. Right.
It's a deaf school.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. That was a segue. Okay, so in 18... Oh, my chronology
No, you're fine.
is out of order here. But in 1860, deaf schools for black children opened. But due to segregation, there became 2 different sign languages. There was American Sign Language and Black American Sign Language.
Oh, yeah.
And that's still to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Which is kind of not like crazy, but it's different. Like, it's almost like there's different accents, like, Southern accent and a Northern accent, and, but it's also because it's due to segregation, which is, like, what am I trying to say here? Like, it's like, I don't know, like, bad upon bad. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, yeah, that's sort of the cool part about sign language itself, is that everybody's got their own accent to it. Like, a lot of people, they're like, oh, well, if I watch an animation of somebody doing K, I do K like that. Some people do K like that. It's just
that's weird.
Kind of what, yeah. Well, I'm also double jointed too, so like,
yeah.
My hands are just weird.
Okay, and then in 1872, I found out that Alexander Graham Bell was kind of a douchebag.
Yeah, very much so.
I didn't realize he was this much of a douchebag.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, let's preface this with his mother and wife were deaf.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, okay. There are two schools of thought. There were the oralists, and then I don't know what you would call the other
The manualists.
The manualists, okay.
Yeah, manualism versus, yeah.
So, the oralists were people who thought that you should teach deaf people how to talk and read lips and so on and so forth. And Alexander Graham Bell was a huge supporter, which is an understatement, of he was an oralist.
Mm-hmm.
So he was also really into eugenics. And if you don't know what eugenics is, it's basically like human breeding. It's kind of like, so he was not into like intermarriage of deaf people. And so if you had like a disability or anything, he didn't want them to have babies. Which is interesting because his wife was deaf.
Oh yeah,
and his mother was deaf.
Yep.
So he even went to the he worked against the deaf by preventing intermarriage, closing schools, trying to eradicate American Sign Language.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1880, the at the Milan conference, he had 3 days. I don't know if he had kids. Do you know?
I think so, and I think one of them ended up being deaf as well. I'm not sure. I'm actually not entirely sure, but
I think that would have come up when I.
yeah, did that?
Hold on.
I'm not sure about that actually.
But so at this Milan conference, he had 3 days to talk about being an oralist and how all these people, how they shouldn't be able to use ASL. And then the people who wanted to use ASL only had 3 hours. And so obviously he won. So Iron Man says someone should have kicked him in the Alexander Graham Bell's. It says had 4 children.
He had 4 children. I wonder if were any of them deaf? Because if this man raised deaf children,
let's see. Just it just says his wife. Just says his wife.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so that Milan conference banned ASL from all the schools.
Mm-hmm. Yep. If you were caught speaking ASL in school, they'd hit you with a ruler.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to this day, like sometimes some of the old or some of the deaf elders will have like scars from the times that they were caught using American Sign Language.
Well, and sometimes, like, some of the things I read is that they would tie their hands behind their backs so that they couldn't sign. Yeah. Oddly enough, the Milan conference was the same year that Helen Keller was born. I didn't really get too much into that because we know a lot about her. But silence. 1901, but I think, this is what I was thinking about, was Alexander Graham Bell, I think, probably pushed a lot of these inventions unknowingly, because this kind of was the beginning of a lot of the, like, 1901 was when the first electric hearing aid was invented. 1907, by the way, Indiana passed its first eugenics law, and it targeted the deaf. 1907.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and California, their eugenics laws, Hitler took his sterilization laws from California, by the way. That was just a little tidbit that I learned while I was doing this.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But in then 1921, Carl C. Hansen invented the first vacuum tube hearing aid.
Oh, yeah.
1950, behind the ear hearing aid. So it's all like within, like 50 years, that kind of became a thing. In 1960, Williams, I don't know how to pronounce it, Stokoe, Stokoe, he published findings regarding sign language as a language. So he said that it was a language, not just like copying English. It's its own language, and that returned American Sign Language to schools in 1960.
Oh, fantastic.
It didn't return it in 1960. It was like 1966 it returned it to schools.
Yeah, because they have to reestablish curriculums and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Um, in 1961, Dr. William House implanted the first 3 patients with the cochlear implant.
Wait.
1961
1961.
was the first 3 implants.
The first 3 cochlear implants. Ooh.
The first documented attempt at using electricity to help with hearing was in 1790. Yeah.
So like, wow. So this
Like,
has
they're
been...
like lightning on a key. Give me that fucking ear.
Give me that ear. I gotta check this out. Wait. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. He's like...
Can you hear me now? Oh, no.
So, the way that worked is kind of like, so 1957, they heard some background noise. 1970s, it was like, there were some major advancements. By 1985, it wasn't experimental anymore.
Yeah, it was like...
It was good to go.
Yep.
There were a few more major things for the deaf community, which was the TTY. I don't know what that stands for, but it's where you use the acoustic coupler, where you could type into the typewriter and it talks to over the phone.
No, I grew up with one of those. Like, it wasn't like for me, it wasn't a typewriter.
Mm-hmm.
It was like semi a typewriter.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of like, it's like a little,
Yeah.
like a combination between like a calculator and a typewriter.
Yeah.
It's like this big.
No, yeah, I remember having one of those. That was like, oh man, back in 2002.
Yeah, yeah. And VRS, video relays.
Video relay services. Yeah, Sorensen, companies like Sorensen.
It's what for you guys, for you uneducated. I googled it. It's basically an interpretation services, right?
Yeah, it's interpretation and like video phone, so like Skype, essentially.
Yeah.
But with a phone number, a landline.
But you know what? What's crazy? 1964 they were doing that. It was like a video where they would sign to this interpreter, and then the interpreter would tell, what you wanted to say. Yeah.
It's like Morse code, but
it was like fucking Skype in 1964.
So cool.
1972, closed captioning came to be after Skype. 1990, the Americans with Disability Act, ADA, which was, I was going to mention that, or I might have mentioned that when you were talking about the schools with their interpreters.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, you comply with that.
I put this down because I thought it was really cool. In 2012, the caption glasses at theaters.
Yeah. Those things suck.
Yeah. And I think it was 2013 was when they had, they made everything, there was an act, I didn't write it down, I don't know why, but where everything had to be captioned.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything.
Yep.
Or access to captioning.
Mm-hmm.
So even on social media, like everywhere. Of all time. So that is where we're at currently for history. But I wanted to go more into, obviously, the name of the episode is Deaf Culture and Cochlear Implants. So the reason we're going into this is because, deaf, capital D, has gone through quite a bit. They've gone through a lot of turmoil,
Oh yeah.
and they now with the internet. They have a lot of, especially now with the internet is what I should say. They have a lot of camaraderie. They have, um, they can do a lot of things that they couldn't before, you know, and I think a lot of things that, when things like cochlear implants come along, um, it feels like people are trying to cure something that they feel like shouldn't be fixed or doesn't need to be fixed. And it feels like just another thing or another person saying there's something wrong with you when there's not, when they have a whole culture behind them. So, just so you guys know what a cochlear implant, other than a hard thing to say, is, I had to write it all down because it's kind of hard to figure out.
Oh yeah.
It bypasses damaged portions of the ear and directly stimulates the auditory nerve. And signals are generated by the implant are sent by way of the auditory nerve to the brain, which recognizes the signal as sound. So when you look at it, there's like a piece here, and then it goes like around your ear like this.
Yep. That's your microphone. That earpiece is your microphone, and that back piece is the magnet, like magnet. I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure if it's the receiver or if it's another part to it. I think it's the battery actually. So you connect the battery into the magnet, then the microphone picks up the signal.
Yeah.
Then it just sends it to the auditory nerve via that complex electrical outlet. it's rough.
So there are a few misconceptions about the implant. Not everybody who is born deaf are candidates for it. Because obviously, I mean, not everybody who's born deaf is born deaf the same way.
Exactly. There's different levels of hearing loss.
Yeah.
And you're not a proper candidate unless you have, like, you're born or eventually have profound hearing loss. Because once you get the implant, all residual hearing that you originally had is gone.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
So once you stick that electrode in there, it pretty much just gets rid of pretty much that whole, all of those organs, like they bypass it.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then like it's pretty much just the electrode array that they plug in that stimulates the auditory nerve. That's what takes over.
Wow.
So yeah, you take off that cochlear implant, no sound at all.
Ugh.
Complete silence.
Well, and some of them, it works perfectly for some people, and not so perfectly for other people.
Yeah. There's it's definitely like hit or miss. Sometimes a person who is deaf who ends up getting the implant. It turns out that they don't like it, so they just don't wear the battery or the microphone piece. They just sort of.
Yeah. Ugh. Other things about this. So, Iron Man, I wish, just asked if it hurts. I looked that up. From what I understand, it doesn't hurt after a while, but, after you get it, it is painful. And I think it's just kind of like every other thing where it can kind of rub, But it's not like, I think, like the recovery time's like 2 weeks or something. Maybe not even that long.
Yeah, it's recovery for a cochlear implant is like roughly 2 weeks to a month. Like they do regular, like audiologists do regular checkups to make sure that everything is properly healing and all that good stuff. But yeah, I think once the either the 4 week or
I think
3 to 4 weeks.
I mean, like the surgery itself is not like.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, you can like be normal, but I'm like normal. you know, like you'll be fine, but, and it won't hurt after, you know, a week or whatever, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you have to go through, one of the things I put on here is you have to, um, you have to, like, do training for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, number one, think about this. You haven't heard shit your entire fucking life. Like, what?
Yeah, and all of a sudden you have sound,
And
you're like...
Oh. And so you don't know, I mean, it could be too loud just because you haven't heard anything for, like, ever. And so it might be too loud just for your ears to be like, I can't deal with all this noise around me, because it's like sensory overload.
Mm-hmm.
It is too much fucking noise, just because now you're hearing not just people talking, but you're hearing the fan in the bathroom, you're hearing, you know, the air conditioning, you're hearing, you know, your kids running around, you're hearing, you know, the cars outside on the street, all these noises, and you're like, I didn't know all these fucking noises existed, and I'm gonna go crazy, like. But it's also training, like, what I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but, like, also kind of figuring out the mix of noise,
Mm-hmm.
like background noise versus, like, kind of like on your TV, right, where it's like you have to fix the vocals and the bass. I don't know how that works, but
Yeah, so it pretty much that's all the audiologist does is, yeah, they like they map it out pretty much for them. They find like different thresholds.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of complicated.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I could be here for days explaining. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially that's
Asking
that's
a
just
deaf
what they
person
do.
if the bass is okay.
Yeah, if the bass is well, that's the thing too. Like, they interpret basses like different. Like, because when you have a cochlear implant, a lot of people don't realize that it's not noise that we perceive.
Right.
It's noise that sounds at times very robotic. Like, if we were to listen to to audio from a cochlear implant, it sounds very heavily distorted and
does it?
very, yeah, it's like a different type of sound that you're rehabilitating a person to learn.
Oh, okay.
You know, so it's not like, yeah, it's not like, you know, you get a cochlear implant, bam, you can hear.
Right.
It's, you got a cochlear implant, this is how you can hear, but you gotta relearn how to, yeah, interpret these signals coming in, because it's rough. It's like very, very harsh and very dissonant. Like, the way I'm talking to you right now, you can hear the acoustics in my voice. You can't with a cochlear implant.
Oh.
Yeah.
Weird.
And there is a reason for that. It has to do with your hair cells.
Oh yeah.
Because your hair cells initially send this. They're supposed to send those signals to the brain, but instead you replace that with an electrode. You can only do so much with an electrode. It doesn't perfectly mimic a natural.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Electricity pathway.
Well, so one of the other things here too is, you know, you can't wear it all the time.
Yeah, you can't wear it in the shower. Like, you gotta take it off in the shower. If you play a contact sport, like if, you know, a person who's deaf who has a cochlear implant plays football, you know, back in the day, you weren't able to because you had that hole in your head, essentially.
Yeah.
And if you damage that,
yeah,
like,
well, they have to take it off while they're sleeping, even.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so, but when it's off, you're deaf.
Mm-hmm.
And
completely.
So, like, half the time, you're deaf. Half the time, you're listening to a robot. And so, it's kind of like this weird controversy. Well, okay, so here's another side note, though. When this came out, doctors were essentially saying, not essentially, they were telling parents not to teach their deaf kids not to teach them American Sign Language because it was the cure to hearing loss. And so, even though now, like, American Sign Language, or sign language in general, has been proven to help develop language in general. So now, people are teaching their kids sign language before they even learn to speak. Like, hearing people are teaching their kids sign language before they learn to speak. But, so, I mean, that was another, like, knife in the, like, you know, nail in the coffin about the cochlear implants.
Oh, yeah.
Where it was, like...
Controversy.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, why would you want a cochlear implant? But at the same time, you know, here's the controversy. It's hard for someone who is not disabled, and you can't really say that word, right? But,
well, I mean,
especially in this context.
Yeah.
But it's hard for me to say to you, why don't you want to hear? When you've never heard a word in your life, like, why would but why would I want to hear? I've never heard anything in my life. Why would I want to hear it now?
Exactly. That's the perspective. That's the mindset of being proud of who you are. Like, this is who I am. I'm a part of something that's beautiful. Why do I want to give it up so that I could, like, be somebody else? You know, and that's the thing too. That's a part of the deaf identity. You know, like, they're very proud of it.
Yeah.
And that's why cochlear implants are very, very controversial. Even if they see a person wearing them, it's like, you're kind of an outcast. Like, you're not a part of this truly because of what you... And in a way that's wrong too, because it's excluding, but also at the same time it's understandable because, you know, they don't want to view it as a disability. They want to view it as, this is who I am. This is my...
It's kind of, you know, I think for me, I like to end all my episodes on, like, wow, you know, you just want, I mean, there is no conclusion, right?
Yeah. Further research is always going to be required. It's always going to be...
I mean, all of these things, you could go either way. Like, because from my perspective, it's like, yeah, you don't want to lose who you are, but at the same time, like, it's, I mean, to be honest, it's hard for me to communicate with Troy.
It's because you don't know American Sign Language yourself, and that's the thing too. Like, the resource of American Sign Language is very limited. Like, there's not a whole lot of schools that teach it nationwide.
Yeah.
There's like no even though in the name it says American Sign Language, you know? Like, why aren't we teaching this in America, you know, like, or at least in the United States?
Right.
Like, and that's a whole big part of, like, what I want to do, as well as spread the language, making sure that, like, all areas, regardless of, you know, level of anything.
Yeah, I think, well, and even just saying that comment too, I was like, oh, well, but on the other hand, you know, how privileged am I to make him communicate, like, fix that problem? Like...
Yeah, well, there needs to be effort, like, both ways, you know, like, and a person who's deaf, you know, they don't have to, like, learn speech, because that takes ages and a lot of practice.
Well, telling someone who was deaf since birth to figure out how to lip read.
Yeah, that's...
Like, what the fuck? Like...
To be or not to be? Like, you're right.
I mean, it's so... Like, how do you just tell somebody how to learn how to read lips, especially when everybody, like, I know that I mumble a lot. Like, their backs are turned.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're looking over here and saying something. You know, like, what the
Mm-hmm.
fuck? How do you tell somebody to read lips? Or, like, I mean, I think it does have to go both ways. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like,
Yeah.
there should be some effort, like, things like ADA, things like the TTY thing,
Mm-hmm.
things like, closed captioning. Fucking, I love closed captioning, and I'm
Oh,
not deaf.
right.
Like, and
It comes in
things like,
handy.
well, things like that too. Closed captioning. It, I forget the number, but it's something outrageous. Like, it helps your kids learn to read,
Mm-hmm.
like, by like
Yeah,
a
because
huge amount, like
uh-huh.
by like 40 times or something nonsensical like that.
Oh, that makes sense because you're hearing the word and you're reading the word being said to you, so
Yeah,
you get both avenues of
yeah,
yeah
and you're,
thought going, and
oh yeah,
it
it's
just
like nonsensical.
yeah no for real, and that's the beauty of it, like
Yeah,
all in all reality, like it's all just like working in harmony. Like there's definitely some parts, but that's like just an effort to keep deaf culture prevalent and alive. Like
yeah,
they don't want to furthermore be pushed into something they don't want to be forced
right,
into, and
right.
that's understandable. Like I wouldn't be, I still don't want to be like forced into, mm, yeah, being a part of a different culture. Like nah,
Yeah.
I'm cool being a metalhead myself.
Yeah. So,
So yeah.
one of the things I do at the end is if there's anything that you found especially interesting during this podcast, if you learned anything. I always
Oh.
try and teach these are experts in the field. Did you learn anything? Did you find anything interesting?
Oh no, like absolutely, like the whole history of it all. Like what I had no idea. What was it, Aristotle? You
Yeah.
said I had no idea he was even involved. I thought he was. He's all making these observations like, yeah, this is.
What the fuck you gotta do with it? Get out of here.
Get out of here! You have no opinion. Go do something you're good at. Like.
Oh, Iron Man said, I did not know Abraham Lincoln was involved with helping so many. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't know that either.
Oh yeah, that's why he was assassinated.
Right?
Like you're too good for this world.
Yeah. You know what I did not know? One of the things I didn't know was, the whole Alexander Graham Bell thing.
Yeah. No.
I thought, like, before this, I was like, cool, phones.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's like that's probably like why he was such an asshole, is because it's like I have this grandiose invention, but only hearing people can use it
Yeah,
for the
well,
time being.
I did know that he didn't, like, actually, like, invent the phone. Like, somebody else
yeah,
did.
but
But he stole it.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
But I was like, okay, whatever. It's
He
like,
plagiarized his.
yeah. But, like, I didn't know he was that much of a dickweed.
Mhm.
Like,
Oh yeah, no, hated by the deaf community, like across all boards, just
what a horrible.
horrible.
Somebody who has a deaf wife and a deaf mother invented the telephone?
Stole credit for inventing the.
Like, what an asshole.
Yeah, no, he's ass. Just yeah.
Alright, well, I think that is all for today. This is Thomas, future audiologist.
Whoa, I got it. We'll be good. And by the way, like audiology, I'd like to end off like audiology. Like they're not looking at fixing deafness or hearing loss. They're just trying to provide another avenue for a person to communicate.
Right.
You know, in any way, shape, or form that a client sees fit.
Right.
So it's not like they're actively trying to, you know. Well, I mean, some doctors are like that, but
Right.
you just got to find yourself one that's deaf friendly.
Yeah. I think in conclusion, just do you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, however you want to identify yourself as in any community, do so. Because I'm trying to figure shit out. I don't even know about Alexander Graham Bell. So. Like, subscribe, follow. I always forget to do that in the beginning. So hopefully you lasted until the end.